Nothing great in the world was accomplished without passion. What is reasonable is real. That which is real is reasonable. To be independent of public opinion is the first formal condition of achieving anything great. It is solely by risking life that freedom is obtained. To be aware of limitations is already to be beyond them. Only by resolving can a human being step into actuality, however bitter this may be to him. I have the courage to be mistaken. What experience and history teaches us is that people and governments have never learned anything from history, or acted on principles deduced from it. If you want to love, you must serve. If you want freedom, you must die. Propounding peace and love without practical or institutional engagement is delusion, not virtue. Every idea, extended into infinity, becomes its own opposite. War is progress, peace is stagnation. Life has value only when it has something valuable as its object. Genuine tragedies in the world are not conflicts between right and wrong. They are conflicts between two rights. The more certain our knowledge, the less we know. The one who merely flees is not yet free. In fleeing, he is still conditioned by that from which he flees. Destiny is consciousness of oneself, but consciousness of oneself as an enemy. The length of the journey has to be borne with, for every moment is necessary. A man who has work that suits him and a wife, whom he loves, has squared his accounts with life. The force of mind is only as great as its expression, its depth only as deep as its power to expand and lose itself. Evil resides in the very gaze which perceives evil all around itself. By nature, man is not what he ought to be. Only through a transforming process does he arrive at truth. The history of the world is none other than the progress of the consciousness of freedom. Education is the art of making man ethical. World history is a court of judgment. The learner always begins by finding fault, but the scholar sees the positive merit in everything. Every consciousness pursues the death of the other. The valor that struggles is better than the weakness that endures. Thinking is, essentially, the negation of that which is before us. Science and knowledge, especially that of philosophy, came from the Arabs into the West. The owl of Minerva begins its flight only with the coming of the dusk. It is easier to discover a deficiency in individuals, in states, and in providence, than to see their real import and value. An individual piece only has meaning when it is seen as part of the whole. Too fair to worship, too divine to love. Art is the sensuous presentation of ideas. When liberty is mentioned, we must always be careful to observe whether it is not really the assertion of private interests which is thereby designated. It is hard to see why we should not turn round and mistrust this very mistrust. Should we not be concerned as to whether this fear of error is not just the error itself? People who are too fastidious towards the finite never reach actuality, but linger in abstraction, and their light dies away. Not curiosity, not vanity, not the consideration of expediency, not duty and conscientiousness, but an unquenchable, unhappy thirst that brooks no compromise leads us to truth. Once the state has been founded, there can no longer be any heroes. They come on the scene only in uncivilized conditions. The Christian imagination produced nothing but an insipid legend. An idea is always a generalization, and generalization is a property of thinking. To generalize means to think. The important question of how poverty can be remedied is one which agitates and torments modern societies especially. History is not the soil in which happiness grows. The periods of happiness in it are the blank pages of history. To babble unintelligible prayers, to read masses, to recite rosaries, to practice ceremonies of religious worship empty of meaning, this is the conduct of the dead. If we go on to cast a look at the fate of world historical personalities, we shall find it to have been no happy one. The spirit is never at rest but always engaged in ever-progressive motion, in giving itself a new form. The state of man's mind, or the elementary phase of mind which he so far possesses, conforms precisely to the state of the world as he so far views it. The most obvious symptoms of an epoch-making system are the misunderstandings and the awkward conduct of its adversaries. As high as mind stands above nature, so high does the state stand above physical life. Man must therefore venerate the state as a secular deity. You must have sex with a woman before you marry her, otherwise you may greatly regret your choice. Reading the morning newspaper is the realist's morning prayer. Philosophy is by its nature something esoteric, neither made for the mob nor capable of being prepared for the mob. In a true tragedy, both parties must be right. Truth in philosophy means that concept and external reality correspond.